Quadratic inequality is written as ax squared plus bx plus c less than 0, or ax squared plus bx plus c greater than 0. It can also be written as ax squared plus bx plus c less than or equal to 0, or ax squared plus bx plus c greater than or equal to 0. It is always read from the left, as you should already know from the concept of linear inequality. Now, inequalities are used to refer mostly to positive numbers and negative numbers. So if something is equal to 0, so we write x equal to 0. X less than 0, that means it's a negative number. So it's a negative number. If we write x is greater than 0, we can write it as referring to a positive number. So you can say it's like a euphemism for negative number and positive number. So if it's a negative number, it could be -1, -2, -3, -4, and on going down the ladder. If it is a positive number, it starts from 1. Or if you are not referring to an integer, it can start from 0.1 or anything else. It can be 1/2, 1/3. So whenever we are using inequalities, we are referring to negative numbers or positive numbers. It could also mean two things at a time, a combination, which is x is less than or equal to 0. It could mean either 0 or a negative number. We could also combine these two and write x is greater than or equal to 0. It could mean 0 or a positive number. So when we solve a quadratic inequality, we are not finding exactly one or two root. We are finding sets of values of x. So let's start with an example. So if you have x squared plus x minus 6 less than 0. So let's do middle term break. So this would be x squared plus, so 6 into 1, the coefficient of x squared is 1, that is 6. So we can break it down into 3 to the 6. So thrice x minus twice x minus 3. In order to do this, you need to know the middle term break method of factoring quadratics. So if we take x common, it would be x plus 3. If you take minus 2 common, it would be x plus 3. So if we factor it, x plus 3 and x minus 2 less than 0. So now what you can do here, you can memorize the trick, so to speak. You can write the values of x if it was equal to 0. So if it was not a quadratic inequality, but if it was a quadratic equation, you would write x is equals to minus 3 or x is equals to 2. So those two would be the root of the quadratic equation, known as the critical value of this inequality. So in that case, what you can do is you can write down the answer as x is between. We write it as between. Remember, it is not. If you write it as in this way, it would be wrong. We never write it in this way. We write it like this. Reading from the left, you write the smaller value in front and you write the larger value later on. So x, this is written as x is greater than minus 3, x is less than 2, and we say x is between minus 3 and 2. Now if the entire thing, if there was an equal to sign over here, suppose instead of being less than 0, meaning negative, the expression being negative, suppose it was less than or equal to 0, less than or equal to 0, less than or equal to 0, the sum would be exactly the same. You just put the less than or equal to 0, less than or equal to 0 symbol here. That's it. This is the solution. So if the same question was given x squared plus x minus 6 greater than 0, then you go through the same middle term break process and write down the factor x plus 3, x minus 2 greater than 0. Now again we assume it is equal to 0 and find the critical values. The critical values are same if it was an equation x equals to minus 3 or x equals to 2. Now if it is greater than 0, we write a bit differently. We write it separately. We write it x is less than the smaller value, notice the smaller value is minus 3, so x is less than the smaller value, or x is greater than the larger value, which is 2. So this is a bit tricky. When it is greater than, we write down the inequalities separately. X is less than the smaller value, or x is greater than the larger value. So this is how it is written. Now if the entire question had greater than or equal to or greater than or equal to, you do the same thing, just instead of the symbol write here equal to sign and write here equal to sign. That's all. So let me write a general rule for this. So the general rule would be, if you have x minus alpha and x minus beta as the factors, and it is greater than 0 or greater than or equal to, then what you have to do is find down the critical values when it is equal to 0, when it is an equation. So one would be x equals to alpha. Suppose x equals to alpha is the smaller value, it is the smaller value, and suppose x equals to beta, I'm just using Greek alphabets for convenience, it's the larger value. So what you do, if it is greater than 0, you write x is less than the smaller value, or x is greater than the larger value. That's all. On the other hand, if the quadratic inequality is factored as like this and it is less than 0, you write them together with this symbol, not the reverse symbol in this symbol. You write the smaller value alpha in first, and then you write the larger value later on. Now you might ask the question, why don't we do one thing? Why don't we use this thing, this reverse inequality over here, and join this together, writing like this: x is writing alpha over here and beta over here, because x is less than the smaller value. So here if you read it, x is less than the value over here and x is greater than over here, just a different way. It's not the same as this, it looks a bit different. Well, we cannot do it, this would be wrong. Now the reason for this is because what the parabola looks visually. So let me show you what it looks like. If you think of solving this in a different way, you can think of what the Cartesian quadratic equation looks like. If you write y equals to ax squared plus bx plus c, the Cartesian looks like a parabola like this. Now one way of thinking of this is, if you have this question x squared plus x minus 6 less than 0, it means this parabola cuts the x-axis, and it cuts the x-axis at 2 points. We already found the critical value, one is minus 3 and the other is 2. So less than 0 would mean the region over here, less than the line, this line is y equal to 0 line or x-axis line, and above the parabola. So it would mean an enclosed region, and we can write it like this: minus 3 to 2, the critical values. On the other hand, if the quadratic inequality is greater than 0, what it would mean that the parabola, the critical values are minus 3 and 2, the parabola is going to be here. So above this line, above this x-axis line, if you have the parabola above this, it is this region and this region. You can see this region are separate from each other, right? If you have this above this line, there is nothing, so it has to be on the left hand side of minus 3, so we write x is less than minus 3, or it is on the right hand side of 2, we write x is greater than 2. So left hand side means less than, right hand side means greater than. That's what it means on the number line. So that's why it is important to write them together if it is less than, or separately if it is greater than. So you can use the parabola rule to find the inequality. As a matter of fact, it's pretty easy to do it and quicker to do it if you use the parabola. Now one final thing about the set of values of x. When you write down the values of x, since it's a set of values of x, it's a good idea to write down the values as sets. So this is how you write down. This is the set notation. Then you write x colon meaning the values are sets of x, and then you write down the value. So minus 3x less than 2, and that's it. This is writing the same answer as sets of values of x. Now if you wanted to write this, you would write it in the same way. Set, second bracket open, x colon. So you write x is less than minus 3. The set notation of OR is this symbol or union symbol. So x is greater than 2. So that's the set notation.